Hello BookTube. Well, I'm back with another New Teen Titans video. This is the New Teen Titans Volume 4. Previously on this channel, I've reviewed Volume 1, Volume 2, Volume 3, and Volume 5, doing them slightly out of order, but now up to Volume 4. In those previous videos, I've talked about my history with the New Teen Titans, and I'm not going to repeat all of that again. You can watch the previous videos if you want to hear me ramble on about it. But just to summarize briefly, these issues came out in 1982 and the last one in January 1983. I got into the New Teen Titans about 10 years later in 1994 and 1995, at which point I was able to pick out some of these issues from the old comic book bin in my local comic book store. If memory serves, I had the last three here. I had the New Teen Titans Annual 1, and I think I had at least one, if not both, of the Runaways issues. And I don't think I had any of the previous issues, although the mind does get foggy after about 30 years. I might have, I'm not sure. But anyways, so I'm going to just start at the beginning, talk my way through this. The camera I'm using cuts out after 30 minutes, so that will be my time limit, and we will see how much progress I make. So this is divided into three separate storylines. The first three storylines are about Brother Blood, maybe the first two storylines are, the first two issues are the first storyline, which is Brother Blood. Then these issues are a space opera storyline. And then the last two are the Runaways storyline. So let's start with Brother Blood. Brother Blood is, I guess, Marv Wolfman's take on televangelists, which were, I guess, becoming popular at this time in the early 1980s. So Brother Blood is not a Christian, or at least not in these issues, but he's the leader of a new religion or a new cult, which relies on mass media. In the introduction here, Marv Wolfman also says that, forget his exact quote, but something about Brother Blood having an inherent sex appeal or sexual prowess, which I guess maybe we can see from these images of women always being draped around him. He also has a lot of senators and congressmen in his pockets. And there's an interesting panel where he's confronting one of them. And it says, the senator's saying, "We need help." And Brother Blood says, "I have supplied you with millions. Have you squandered them already?" And the senator says, No, it's just that since Abscam, things have been touchy. It isn't as easy to offer bribes. I had no idea what Abscam was. Now, granted, I was quite young in the early 1980s when this came out, but I Googled it and found out on Wikipedia, and it's interesting. If you want to go down an interesting Wikipedia rabbit hole, just Google Abscam. The short version is this was an FBI sting in which they were trying to catch congressmen and senators taking bribes, and apparently caught 7 of them red-handed. 6 House of Representatives and 1 senator, if I'm remembering correctly. And I never heard of it. Have you heard of it? It's interesting how this stuff, it must have been big news at the time, and then it just kind of disappears from public memory, I guess, as today's scandal makes yesterday's scandal obsolete. But interesting. Go ahead and Google Abscam if you want to go down an interesting little rabbit hole. So that's one of the interesting things about reading old comic books. And the New Teen Titans in particular tends to name drop a lot of stuff, historical references, stuff that was in the news at the time. I think this is maybe just Marv Wolfman. He likes to name drop little cultural references. So, it's the kind of thing that before Wikipedia would probably have been quite confusing. Because, certainly when I was reading these in the early 90s, I think I must have missed half of these references. But nowadays, you can just look them up on Wikipedia. So, yeah, always useful to have an internet connection nearby when you're reading some of this stuff, if you don't mind getting a little bit distracted. But anyways, yes, the Brother Blood storyline wraps up. And then at the end of the Brother Blood storyline, we are introduced to the space opera storyline. So this is Blackfire, aka Commander, who is Coriander's sister. And if memory serves, she was a reoccurring villain in the New Teen Titans. She came back for several story arcs, but this is the first one. Now, she was introduced at the end of Volume 3 in what was the Tales of the Teen Titans miniseries, in which several of the Teen Titans gave their backstory. But this is the first time she's entering into the series proper. Now, in my review of Volume 3, I mentioned that when talking about the Coriander and Commander storyline in the New Teen Titans, Tales of the New Teen Titans collected in Volume 3, there seemed to be some sort of bondage fetish. And again, I had some of these issues when I was younger. It's something that never occurred to me when I was younger. Of course, I was a lot more innocent back then, and, it was before the internet and all that stuff. But looking at these issues now, I don't know, maybe it's not quite as blatant as it was in the Tales of the New Teen Titans miniseries, which were collected in Volume 3 of these collections. But if you're looking for it, it is there. There is a lot of Coriander getting bound in this storyline. She is bound a lot. And then once she is bound, there is a fair amount of her getting tortured by her sister in that position. I'm showing you some of it, but believe me, it is all the way through the storyline. So, I don't know. Am I imagining a fetish where it is not there, or is there something going on here? You tell me. But anyways, the storyline is a space opera, and on the one hand, it's kind of incredibly simple. It's the Teen Titans versus the bad guys. But on the other hand, the mythology here is really complex. Mythology in terms of the lore here. Really complex and a bit confusing. I'm not quite sure I understand all of it, but let me try and run through what I think I do understand. Okay, so there is Coriander. Sorry, this is Coriander and her sister Commander, who are both from the planet of Tamaran. Commander has betrayed her planet to the alien Citadel in exchange for Coriander becoming enslaved. The Citadel is in league with the Gordian slavers, who are these lizard creatures who they are fighting. But then we are introduced to the Omega Men and a brief cameo by Superman. The Omega Men, Marv Wolfman writes this in his introduction, they were previously introduced in the Green Lantern series, also by Marv Wolfman. Marv Wolfman, in the introduction to this volume, says he introduced the Omega Men for the purpose of later including them in the new Teen Titans storyline. So I guess he was already planning ahead. Anyways, the Omega Men are a diverse collection of superheroes, each with their own backstories and interests, but they are from the same star system. Let's see. Yeah. Where does it say they were from the same star system? Somewhere here it says they're from the same star system. I don't know what that means. I guess that means the same solar system. So they're from the same solar system as Coriander and Commander. And this solar system has had a long war with creatures known as the Pisons. Let me see if I can find a picture of the Python. Yeah. So, Lord Damien, why is that Python allowed here? They are our enemies. So these are the Pisons. Pisons have fought a long war against this star system. And as part of that long war, they destroyed the moon of the Citadel, which later got reformed to be these floating fortress. The Citadel is controlled by these gorilla-like creatures, which I think are native to the solar system. I might be getting that wrong. I think that's right. They're native to the solar system. The Python are the invaders. But at the moment, the gorilla-like creatures are in control. And they're quite brutal creatures who eat other creatures and enjoy tearing people limb from limb and eating them. There is one scion who has defected over to them. And meanwhile, the Omega Men, who are also from the same system. And then there's Exhale. Yes. So Exhale is the goddess of this solar system. Now, she has a backstory, which they get into. Where do they get into that? Over here. She was once the leader who fought against the Pisons and then established peace. But then later the Pisons attacked, in which they destroyed this moon of the Citadel and turned Exhale into a being of pure energy who now just desires revenge. And because she's become too powerful and destructive, she's been imprisoned on one of the planets. But now that she's become loose, she's letting forth her destructive power. Meanwhile, where this is going on, one of the Scions, Python, who is pretending to have defected to the Citadel, is actually planning to sabotage the Citadel's empire. Meanwhile, there's the Omega Men who have different backstories and agendas. For example, there's this one whose name is Demona, who is actually pretending to be one of the good guys, but actually a bad guy in disguise. So if the name didn't give it away. Did I miss anything? So all of that is set up for this, but it's set up in a very quick way. So like, as you're reading through this, it gets a little bit confusing. I actually had to go back and reread these to make sure everything was straight. Maybe I would have understood it even more if I would have read the Omega Men issues from the Green Lantern series. And the other issue where a lot of this was set up, the Tales of the New Teen Titans miniseries, which were in the previous volume, Volume 3, I read, but I already returned that to my local library after I finished it. So as I was reading this, I didn't have the luxury of going back and double checking the details. But I think I'm understanding everything right. All of that is set up, and yet the narrative payoff to it is not great. So there are all these moving wheels, but it all just kind of resolves in a big nothing. I guess the big thing that we do get is what you would expect, a big showdown between Coriander and Commander, which takes place in the New Teen Titans Annual #1. So the storyline is resolved in the annual. You have to go out and buy the annual. Or at the time, you would have had to go out and buy the annual to see the storyline resolved. Now, to give credit where credit is due, George Perez's artwork really pops here. I mean, look at this. There is some great eye-catching artwork here, where you're looking at this, and it's just very eye-catching visuals. Although the fight between Coriander and her sister becomes a little bit maybe uninspired. I remember even thinking about this when I was collecting these issues as a young adolescent. Ordinarily, I really like fight scenes in comics, or I did when I was young. But I remember reading this and thinking, this is just kind of, can get a little bit boring. I mean, they're fighting, but it just seems to be a series of moves with no real consequence. Like, okay, I hit you, you hit me, I hit you, you hit me. Just, I don't know. I guess it's hard to make an action sequence truly pop. And like I said before, some of the panels preceding this, the action sequence was really popping, but it does also just get a little bit boring here. And then, like I said, everything that's set up doesn't really seem to have much of a payoff. So it's set up that the Python is trying to sabotage the Citadel with his explosives. It's also set up that Exhale is this goddess of destruction, which is being unleashed. But then what actually happens is a little bit confusing. But I guess what happens is that she just absorbs all the explosives. And she does that just because she likes to absorb destructive power, or is she doing this to save the Citadel? And so the Python, his plans to destroy the Citadel come to nothing. So the Python's treachery, the destructive goddess Excel being released, it all just seems to come to a big anticlimax in the end. But I don't know. I complain, but the whole big space opera saga was interesting. I mean, it was convoluted and confusing, but to a certain extent, you know, if you're enough of a geek to get into this complicated, confusing comic book lore, it's kind of interesting just seeing all the world building that's going on here, even if a lot of it does seem to be superfluous to the story. But I don't know. I'm enough of a geek to kind of get into this a little bit, and perhaps some of you are too. And it's interesting to a degree. Certainly when I was reading this, it held my interest. There was a lot of stuff going on. It was fast-paced. I wanted to see where this was all going. I was a little bit disappointed that it didn't really seem to go anywhere more interesting, but it's interesting while you are reading it. Okay, and then on to the last storyline, which is the runaway storyline. Now, I don't remember exactly where I read this. I guess this was before the internet, so I must have read it in the letters page or the columns pages of some of the back issues I picked up in the 90s. But the runaway storyline, which is in number 26 and 27, was apparently very well received at the time and regarded as like a big, important social issue that the comic book writers were tackling. And I think somebody correct me if I'm remembering this wrong. I think I remember reading somewhere that there was some worry that it might not be approved by the Comics Code Authority. Although I Googled that just now, and I couldn't find anything. The only thing I found is an interview online where Marv Wolfman says that by this point in comic book history, they were no longer really that concerned about the Comics Code. So it wouldn't really have mattered anyway. There was a time, I guess, in the decades preceding this, where if something didn't get the Comics Code, then it means it essentially couldn't get published. But yeah, I guess point being, well, first of all, somebody let me know if I'm at all on the wrong track about there being some sort of controversy with the Comics Code in these two issues. And the reason that there might have been a problem with the Comics Code is because it depicts runaway children being forced into prostitution, and it depicts people with drug use. And yeah, apparently it was well regarded at the time for being like, touching on important social issues. But that being said, reading this, you can't, I don't know. I'm skeptical about how much Marv Wolfman and George Perez actually knew about real-life runaways. Now, I don't really know that much about either Marv Wolfman or George Perez. I guess Marv Wolfman was the writer, so I'll focus on him. But I get the impression he was just like a middle-class white guy. And he's depicting these runaways as being kind of just touchy teenagers who don't like their parents asking too many questions. So please, Louise, don't go. Don't leave. We love you. Man, you crowd me, Ma. Too many of you asking too many personal questions. Hey, I got rights. I don't have to answer nothing. Got that, Ma? You want me to stay? It's under my terms. I stay out as long as I want. I do what I want, see who I want to see, and no questions. Comprende? So, I mean, this does not sound like... I mean, most runaways are, I would imagine, are runaways because they have got some really bad situations at home, where there's enough bad stuff going at home that they have to run away. And to be fair, some of these situations do get closer to that. So here's a pregnant girl essentially just getting kicked out by her father, so she's in a really desperate situation. Although here again, there's an element of this which seems a little bit unrealistic. Like if the father is just such a monster. You want to know what to do, Lizzie? I'll tell you what to do. You go marry that scum. Let him take care of your baby. I want nothing to do with it. I mean, if he's that much of a monster, then why is she so shocked and heartbroken by it? And to spoil things, at the end of the storyline, she tries to return to her father, and he kicks her out again. And it just, I don't know, there's none of it really seems real. It seems like contrived situations for hack writers to set up contrived conflicts. And I don't want to call Marv Wolfman a hack writer, because I think he is very talented at certain things, but it seems like a hack writer for this. Anyways, there's a bunch of runaway kids who are getting swept up with the gangs. The Titans are getting involved with them. We also see the first appearance of Tara, who's going to go on to be important in Volume 5. And then beyond Volume 5, she's going to be important in the Judas contract storyline, but that's for another day. And Adrian Chase, who actually showed up earlier. He had his first appearance at the beginning of this volume with the Brother Blood storyline. But he as well is going to be important in Volume 5, and they're going to spin him out as his own superhero later. But yeah, and then the second and final issue of the Runaways storyline, where we get Roy Harper meeting up with the Titans. So Speedy, who was one of the members of the original Teen Titans, was not one of the new Teen Titans, although he would be a frequent guest star in the new Teen Titans. And this, I believe, is his first guest star appearance with the new Teen Titans. So, yeah, there's some great interaction between him and Robin here. He says, "Excuse me, Robin, if you don't mind, I'd like to go with you." Robin says, "Well, Roy, normally we don't like working with civilians, but in your case, I guess we can make an exception." And then later, "Civilians, you really know how to trowel it on, Dick." "Well, what did you want me to say, Roy? You're always welcome because you used to be one of us." "Man, it's good seeing you again, pal. What have you been up to?" He says, "You cut a mean costume, Mr. Harper. Coming from you, Mr. Grayson, that is a definite compliment." And then he immediately starts hitting on Raven. And Robin says, "Whoa, slow down, Romeo. I see you're the same as ever." "Believe it, pal. Remember, they don't call me Speedy for nothing." Sigh. The more things change, the more they stay the same. For a character who's not been with the Teen Titans for all these 20 issues and is reintroduced here, he immediately comes in with some good character dynamics. So that's good writing by Marv Wolfman, even if the whole runaway thing is very contrived. And then it ends, of course, with another runaway running out because he doesn't like it when his parents tell him what to do. "Well, you're under my roof, you do what I say." "Then I'm going. "Oh no, I'm sorry, don't." But it's too late. He's off on the streets for a life of prostitution and drugs. That's the way teenagers are. That's what happens when you try and tell them what to do, according to Marv Wolfman, at least. I tend to view this runaway storyline as very cheesy, but it was apparently very well received at the time. Maybe it's just me, or maybe that's just an example of how times have changed over the years. But there you go. So that is issue 4. I've already reviewed issue 5 before. So that means, assuming it comes through on Interlibrary Loan, I'll continue with issue 6 next. Thank you very much, BookTube.